Hey fellas, this is RWBY speaking, and you saw the thumbnail, you see the picture right here, the Justice League RWBY crossover, a crossover that nobody asked for, but some, including myself, were invested, were intrigued, and so when the crossover came out on DVD, some had watched it, some didn't enjoy it, but some did enjoy it, including myself, and then part 2 came out, and I enjoyed that even more. Now, I'm going to be talking about both crossovers, together, so I will be going into spoilers. If you have not seen these crossovers, you should before you continue with this video, so let's go on with this crossover. I'm a little bit surprised that Warner Brothers would want to combine RWBY and Justice League for this big event. It's just, I don't know, it's not the most weirdest thing, but it's just something that just came out of the blue. Then again, there were those comic books that I hear they are loosely based off of, they're their own thing. Whereas this crossover is a bit more canon to the RWBY universe. When we first saw the trailer, I thought it was just going to go in its own direction, and that it wasn't going to follow the story and just be more, just try to be more fun without making any plot holes. I thought it's just going to be similar to the One Piece movies where, yeah, we enjoy them, but they're not part of the main story. And obviously we were wrong, especially towards the end where RWBY and them come out of this machine and they think it's a simulation, but turns out in RWBY, in part 2, they see oh, the Justice League was real and they're older, so we gotta go help them. Now, I do like part 2 better than part 1. I don't know if I said that before in this video, but I just liked part 2 better because I felt like we got more and not too much. And I also feel like it just looked like the Justice League acted more like the Justice League. Whereas in part 1, yeah, they were cool, but they acted more they didn't really act too much like the Justice League. I thought a lot of them just acted more like RWBY characters, they weren't from a different show. And I feel like when you do a crossover, between two series, you gotta make sure that one series feels like how it was in its original source material. Say, I'm trying to give examples of crossovers. My two favorite crossovers are the Jimmy Timmy Power Hour and Courage meets Scooby-Doo. Those crossovers were just so good. They just had that balance of, okay, this feels like both Fairly Odd Parents and Jimmy Neutron. And when I was watching the Courage and Scooby-Doo, it felt like Scooby-Doo and Courage combined together. Whereas part 1, it just feels like a really long RWBY episode. Which I'm down for, but if you're gonna add these characters from a totally different franchise, you gotta make them feel like themselves. And I know people are like, oh, well, they lost their memories and stuff and they're younger. Yeah, but I just wish they acted more like the Justice League, like they came from the DC universe. But again, I'm not hating. But the Justice League and RWBY had good chemistry, good interaction. I mean, RWBY and Superman being leaders, learning from one another in the first part. And then you have John and Jessica, who's the Green Lantern, obviously. I'm more used to Jon Stewart since the Justice League animated series on Cartoon Network, but Jessica is still cool. She gave me a good first impression. I liked the chemistry between those two because obviously she's trying to find her ring, and John knows what that's like, where he didn't really have aura back then, so he knows to be patient with her and all that. Oh, and that one scene where John keeps seeing Pyrrha. Dude, you're just messing with our minds and stuff, man, you monster. And then we see that the villain that they're going up against is Kilgore. I don't know who Kilgore is that much. I mean, I tried to look him up, and I don't think he was in the Justice League animated series, so I guess this was my first time with Kilgore, so I mean, he was okay. He wasn't anything special or anything. He was just more like a Saturday morning cartoon villain where, I'll get you next time. It's the second part where we see that he is working with Watts. And I was super shocked that Arthur Watts came back. I thought he was dead. And, well, technically he might have died, but then copied his memories into the DC world. It's just RWBY DC logic. That's just how it works. But either way, he was cool to see. But the problem that I had was that he made his entrance way too late in this crossover. Like, I felt like he could have... Excuse me. I felt like he could have shown up at, like, the end of the first part, where it's a post-credit scene and we see him and Kilgore, and that would have been a really good cliffhanger. That would have been a really good hook for the second part, because all it is, like, at the very end of the first part, it's just RWBY and them being like, who made this machine? Like, who? And they never touch upon it again until the second part. And so that was just, I don't know, it was just kind of, I felt like they just could have done it better with Watts. And another thing though, like Watts and Weiss, I felt like there was going to be a bit of a conflict between these two characters. Like, I felt like when Weiss was by herself and she was talking to Batman, I felt like there would have been the perfect moment for Watts to come in and be like, hello, Weiss, we finally meet. Because I don't think they met in, I don't think Watts met any of Team RWBY at all. Like, I don't think he had any type of interaction with them until this crossover. And so, him and Weiss could have built so much chemistry as hero and villain, similar to the Batman and the Joker. And oh my god, though, even though the Joker and Harley Quinn only had like 2 seconds of screen time, just seeing them just having drinks together and watching the grim attack, I was just cheering. And so was my friend Chandler. Like, we were just loving that moment. I was just so glad he actually made an appearance, even though we didn't see his face, but we know it's the Joker. We just know it's the Joker, for Christ's sake. Throughout the second part, Weiss is still recovering from losing Atlas/Mistral. Like, we see that she doesn't have powers also, and now adding Watts on top of all of this. Like, I mean, it was cool that she got to confront him in the climax, but like I said, if they had just shown him a lot earlier approaching Weiss, like, I felt like that would have been some really good potential. He could have been like, hey, I took away your home, what are you going to do about it? And then he could have just affected her both mentally and physically, because obviously with her not having any powers and him having powers, obviously he would have won the fight. Then the Justice League could have came in and stopped him, and he could have gotten away. Another character that is also affected, like, mentally during this second part is the Flash, when he's still trying to get over how, well, not trying to get over, but he's still affected from his experience with Kilgore when Kilgore took over his body. So he's, like, trying to figure out a way to be, like, useful again without being tricked by Kilgore again. Like, that's what he's trying to do. And he does prove himself in the third act when he lets Kilgore take over, sort of, but Kilgore doesn't take over fully. And so the Flash just puts Kilgore right in his place. And that's another thing, though, too, that I liked about this crossover, like the second part. Where in the first part, like I said, it just felt like more like RWBY and less Justice League. Where the second part felt more like Justice League and RWBY, because you have the DC characters not just acting like DC characters, but they also have their own arcs, their own development. And Flash just gets the most time to shine, to develop. It's also interesting to see the Grimm fighting the Justice League, and then when the Justice League defeats the Grimm, they turn into like ink and not dust. It kind of reminds me of in Samurai Jack, where he fights robots, he cuts the robots, and they start oozing oil. The crossover ends where the good guys win and Watts and Kilgore are in this virtual prison. And to me, that's just a fate worse than death. Like, you're stuck in a prison with someone you don't like. I mean, you don't have to kill off a villain just to never see them again. I mean, we don't have to do the same thing with Roman or Adam or Ironwood. Team RWBY goes back, and I wonder if they're going to bring it up to Jean, Nora, and Ren. Like, RWBY just goes up to them, and it's just like, hey, we forgot to tell you this, but we went to the world where the Justice League lives. they were having Grim issues, and so we helped them out. Oh, and remember Watts? We fought Watts. He turns out he survived, but we defeated him when he went to this prison. So we're never gonna see him again. So we just want to let you know. So now let's just wait till Salem shows up. If I were to rate these two separately, part 1 would be a 7 out of 10, and part 2 would be an 8 out of 10. Now I just want to see a Scooby-Doo RWBY crossover, where Scooby and the gang are transported to Remnant, and they end up having powers. I mean, I would love to see Shaggy and John interact with each other. Like Sonic Sean! Now I'm just making this video weird, guys. I know that'd be a really weird crossover, but hey, who knew a RWBY Justice League crossover was gonna happen? So, anything is possible. What did you think of this crossover? Did you like it? Did you not? Your thoughts down below. And if you are new to this channel, please be sure to hit that subscribe button down below. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm RWBY, and may the anime force be with you.